It's really important when you rig a boat to make sure that once you've done it, that you actually check what you've done and make sure that everything's complete. The first thing you want to do is rig it and make sure you've got that right. The things to check, that all of the nuts are tight, all of the clips are tight, so the rig is not going to come off, and I suggest give them each a bit of a shake to make sure that they're right. Next thing I think is most important to check is that all of the seat runs correctly, the feet are correct, because if your boat's been transported at all, then sometimes you'll find that these things tend to get bumped or knock off or loose. So just make sure all that stuff's tight, that's pretty important. If you know the boat well and it's your own boat, then there's less that you need to check, but it's still important to have a good look at it. A simple thing to check is the pitch. Now, usually the pitch won't change unless something is loose or it gets bent. So if you've already checked all the nuts are tight, then you're probably right on the first one. But as far as a bent pin, then what you want to do really is have a quick check. If you're going to try and check it thoroughly every time with a pitch gauge, well, you can do that, but I suggest that in most cases you won't need to do that. If the boat's sitting on a set of trestles or on the rack and it's relatively level, then just by looking at put the gate so that it's parallel with the boat, i.e. at the square position, if you were rowing, and then have a look at it and just see what angle the gate's on. If the angle of the back of the gate looks pretty normal, so it's got a slight angle, depending if the boat's up the right way, but it's got a slight angle, so a slight pitch on the blade, then it's probably okay. And I wouldn't bother checking it further unless you think there's something wrong. On your oars, you need to make sure that your oars are tight, so check all the screws to make sure they're tight, particularly the screws holding the handle and the button. A number of times I've seen athletes row off and the gearing will change a little bit. Now what happens is that if they don't tighten up the handle and it's a stub that sits inside the oar and it's not tight, then what will happen is that, like for example in a croaker oar, then you'll find that the handle can move in or out. Now if it moves in a bit, it becomes really heavy because it's a heavily geared oar at that point. So it's important to make sure that you've got all those tight. If they've moved, then make sure you check them, remeasure them and get them right. Don't just tighten them up. On a boat that's got a rudder, it's really important to get that bit right. And the usual problem with the rudder isn't where it actually is, the rudder attached to the boat, it's really how it interacts with the foot steering. So you need to look at the foot steering and make sure that, move it a little bit and make sure that it works, because there's nothing worse than having a rudder locked onto a position and you can't change when you're trying to race, because that's a really unpleasant experience. A couple of other things to do from a safety perspective: make sure the bow ball's there, make sure that it's on firmly and it's not likely to come off, and very, very important, absolutely important, is check that you've got heel ties and you don't have more than about 5 or 6, maximum 7 centimeters of lift in that heel, so that if you do fall out of the boat and you're upside down, at least you can get your feet out without any issue. Make sure that the ties, the quick release laces, if you call them that, on the shoes, and that they're in working order as well. Once you've done all that, then there's a fair chance you're going to have a good row, so enjoy it.